This is the Fiscal webinar for the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. I'm Camille Sheik. I oversee this grant program, and I have Tammy Long here. She's our Fiscal Compliance Manager who helps support the fiscal end of this grant. So as a reminder, when we're considering what can you spend your money on, what can't you spend your money on, I want to bring back the focus areas of this grant. We're very focused on providing academic enrichment, academic support to students, aligning with the school day. So that's what your purchases should be around, providing that academic support so students can meet state and local student performance standards. We want to offer them additional services. So this could be enrichment programming, prevention programming that is somehow tied to teaching them a skill, working on some area of prevention. Additionally, family engagement is also part of this grant. So connecting families with resources, holding family engagement nights that have a clear tie to how parents can help support their students is also allowable. But as you go through and you design your program and you're implementing activities from what students do each day to what you have for families, keep these focus areas in mind. So before we dive into allowable and unallowable expenses, I'm going to go over some important information. We really recommend quarterly reimbursements. Monthly reimbursements would be preferred. This helps everyone keep on track of the spending, so we're not submitting one reimbursement at the end of the school year or the end of the fiscal year in June. We really recommend these quarterly reimbursements. That's how we know you're spending the money, and not only are you spending the money, but you're spending the money on the appropriate things. If you haven't submitted a reimbursement all year, maybe there's some allowable expense that comes up and you don't have a way to cover that. But by submitting quarterly reimbursements, and if your organization is able to, monthly reimbursements are preferred. But meeting with whoever your fiscal staff are to help get on a regular reimbursement cycle. Also, with each reimbursement request submitted, we use the Utah grant system. You need to include a general ledger, any receipts for items purchased, time and effort documentation, and it would be helpful if you're having a family and parent engagement activity that includes food or some costs that we typically wouldn't see, provide an agenda or other documentation that will expedite the process while we're reviewing your reimbursement. Now, we mention this a lot with the funding. We say you need to use your old money first. What that means is we don't want to use so right now we're in fiscal year 2020, that's the state fiscal year. So July 1 to June 30th, that's the state fiscal year. So if you're in fiscal year 20 with your spending, but you have remaining fiscal year 2019 funding that you hadn't spent down, it's carryover, we're always going to say you need to use the oldest money first. That's very important, as long as it's the same program sites. Many of the organizations we work with might have funding for different program sites, and we understand that, but if you have fiscal year 2019 money remaining, and then you have your new fiscal year 20 funding remaining, and it's for the same program sites, we're always going to say you use your oldest money first, unless there's a specific circumstance, and then we would want you to get a hold of us. Right, Tammy?
Yes.
So keep that in mind when we say old money first. That's what we're talking about. Another question that comes up a lot is, what is it? How does carryover work? What does it mean? Are you going to add, my last year's money to this year's pot? And yes, that's how it works on your back end. But the system we use will always keep the fiscal year funding in the fiscal year it originated from. We're not going to add what carryover funding you have for fiscal year 2019 into your bucket for fiscal year 2020. We keep those separate. Now you can still spend, because this federal funding has 27 months of availability, you can still spend fiscal year 2019 funding in this fiscal year, but it's always going to stay in that bucket of fiscal year 2019. So keeping that in mind, we're not, changing those buckets of funding. So I know it will be tricky on your end to try to say, okay, I really have this much from 2019, I have my full amount from 2020. How do you come up and You'll need to work with your finance person to decide the best way to spend that, what makes the most sense. And if you have questions about this, about spending the old money first, or how you plan through that process, and you're coming up against a wall, contact us. We can come meet with you either in person or over the phone. We can schedule a webinar to talk, to make sure that you're spending the old money first, that you have a plan for that, and that you'll be able to spend the fiscal year 2020 money as well. Even though this is 27 months of availability, we really encourage you to spend your money for the year, that because essentially your budget, that's your plan for the school year and some of the summer months. So we really try to say stick to your plan, but we understand changes come up, but it's better for us to know about those changes now rather than in May. Allowable expenses. Of course, staff would be allowable if you have teachers, paraprofessionals, prevention specialists. Those are, of course, allowable. Staff and their benefits. Supplies, materials, equipment. This is academic focused, pencils, paper, books, prevention curriculum, other curriculum, professional development training. That's very important. We know that's connected to having a quality program, is having staff who are trained well. If you are not participating in the child nutrition reimbursement program, we really encourage you to do that. We do allow for healthy snacks and some dinners, but again, if you're consistently having to pay for snack out of your 21st Century Grant and you're not on the reimbursement program, we really encourage you to contact Child Nutrition at the State Board of Education to get that information about how you could get some kind of reimbursement. So you might have some snacks and dinners for your family engagement activities, but we need to see that there's been a direct link to student learning, that you're teaching families and students about how they can support their student. If it's doing reading activities at home, if it's working on some math problems, whatever it is, there needs to be that link to student learning. We're all about high quality family engagement. We do require pre-approval for t-shirts for student safety, but as a reminder, they must remain with the program and they cannot be taken home. If you have questions about this or concerns with your particular site for the t-shirts, please reach out to us. We take that on a case-by-case basis, but this is the rule for t-shirts right now. They're t-shirts for student safety. Out-of-state travel, overnight travel require pre-approval, but we do encourage you to try to find something that's in-state. We have a lot of great professional development opportunities here before doing out-of-state travel. Field trips require pre-approval, and we'll go over the way you can get all your field trips approved for the year, but those field trips need to have a direct link to program goals and outcomes, something that supports academic success. We'll go over some field trips that would not be allowable. And then other food costs, if you're going to have food costs for another purpose, talk to us now before you do it. Get that pre-approval if it's another purpose. It's some kind of event that is not connected to family engagement or something else. Let us know beforehand. This is a field trip request form. So you have two options. You can do, if you're not going to go on very many field trips throughout the year, you can just submit this form. It's a Google form. It just asks you, who's your organization, which program sites is this going to cover, how many students are going to participate, the date, where you're going, and then the ties to your program goals and outcomes. So please fill this out. It looks like this. It's a pretty simple form. What are the direct links between your program goals and outcomes? What are the direct links between academic learning support? So if you're just going to go on a few field trips throughout the year, I know summer is a bigger time for field trips, you can complete this form. You can also submit, if you want to do all your field trips for the entire year, you can do a spreadsheet. I have a template here that asks the same question on the other form. So you can complete this and do all of your field trips for the year. And you can include multiple program sites, but this is where you could do all of them for the year. And we'd have that documentation. So when you submit your reimbursement on a quarterly or monthly basis, then we can just refer to this documentation and it will make the process a bit quicker while we're reviewing. So what can you not buy? The unallowable expenses, anything that is considered entertainment. So this could be going to Boondocks, going to bowling, going to Lagoon, things that are typically considered entertainment and have no direct link to student learning or that could support student learning in any way. These are Department of Education federal funds. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind the focus areas of the 21st Century Grant. With after school programs, we often dance on the line between academic supports and things that could be considered entertainment. So if you are in doubt, if a field trip or some kind of activity is crossing over into that entertainment line, please reach out to myself, Tammy Long, Sandra Grant. We'll share our contact information and get pre-approval, or just let's have a discussion beforehand. There's no food for meetings or trainings. This is a change from previous years. Moving forward, no food for staff meetings or trainings, no candy or soda, no incentives, things that would be considered toys, gift cards, gaming systems, again, t-shirts, you have to get that pre-approval, and no sales tax on purchases. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but this gives you a better idea when you're planning your activities. We're really moving away for incentives, candy. If you want to have those things in your program, they cannot be purchased with these funds. You can reach out to your community partners, maybe have some donations, things of that nature, but we can't buy these things with these federal education dollars can't be used for these things. So entertainment. So federal funds generally may not be used for entertainment. This includes spending program funds and program income on items such as amusement park fees, ball games, field trips, aquarium tickets, purchasing gift cards, giving incentive awards, t-shirts, or purchasing food. Now, specific costs that might otherwise be considered entertainment that have a programmatic purpose, so a connection to your goals and outcomes of the program, providing academic support, could be allowable with prior written approval. So you need to have that prior approval. If you want to take the students to the Natural History Museum or the aquarium, those things, looking at them, could be viewed as entertainment. But if you have a plan and you have an activity, a learning activity that the students are going to do while they're at the museum or the aquarium, and you can document that with pre-approval, then those things could be allowable. This is my contact information. If you have programmatic questions, please shoot me an email, give me a call. We can discuss it. We can set up a meeting. I know that there's some difference in previous years compared to this year's, but we really are trying to follow the rules and requirements of this federal funding so that we are in compliance with that and that no one has unallowable expenses that have to be removed at the last minute and you might not have funds to cover those. So reach out to us and let us know what questions you have. Now we'll be going over time and effort information, and Tammy Long will take this section and give you some specifics about, why we need to do this, what it looks like. This is just a broad overview of the information from our perspective, but if you needed more one-on-one support, we can set something up.
Okay, time and effort. What we're going to learn in this model is who needs to maintain time and effort and why. Why is because if we receive federal dollars, we must comply with federal regs and maintain time and effort in all of the federal programs. There's different types of certifications. You can do a semi-annual, and that is if twice a year, if you do the same thing all the time. You're 100% doing Title III or Title IV or 21st Century, any of them, if you're doing them 100% of the time, you can do it twice a year. A multiple cost objective means you're going to be splitting your time between different projects. If you put a personal activity report with that, you can do that. It's good for, you'd have to do it semi-annually, and it's good as long as you're doing that same job and you don't change. If you do the job for 2 months, spread your time equally, and then they say, oh, you're going to do something else, or we're going to put you a little more back to 21st century, then you would just sign off on your last work and start a new time and effort document going forward. And then we have a single cost objective where you just do it basically on a daily time period, and you can either use a time clock. You can clock in, do the job, clock out, however you want, however you're set up to do that, but write down your time that you're spending on the project. And basically why we do time and effort is it's a federal reg. We all have to comply with the rules. One of the most common findings in audit can lead to a significant monetary liability. If you don't have time and effort and you've claimed time for somebody on your payroll, we cannot reimburse if we don't have the time and effort to back that up. So it is critical that you provide the backup with your payroll and they all match. If you notice that the example here, the University of Florida was snagged in an audit because they couldn't make everything balance, and they lost a lot of money. I mean, the feds do make you pay this back if you don't handle it properly. What is the time and effort reporting? It's the documents time spent on any activity, and more than HR timekeeping. So if you have an electric time card and you clock in and you clock out, you still must have a policy that says, they sign into a secured spot. They can have a swipe card. They can do it from a fingerprint or whatever. They sign into a secured area. Every time they switch jobs that they're doing or whatever, they sign in, they sign out to a different code, and then their boss at the end of the week or however often they get paid goes in and agrees, verifies that is what they worked. And so that we keep track of all the time that is being calculated. Okay, so here's a little chart to help you determine if you need to keep time and effort documents. And first of all, you say, are they employees? If they're not an employee with your organization, then you don't have to do anything. But if they are employed with you and if they are paid with federal funds, then you must keep track of the time and effort. So that chart's just something to help you try to figure out if you're going to keep track of your time and effort. And who needs to maintain time and effort? Okay, a contractor working on your title program, getting paid with 100% federal funds, then they're going to need to, keep track of their time, how much was spent, and report it. If you have a part-time employee working 21st and getting paid with 100% of federal funds, then they must submit time and effort. And the employee has to sign them, and the agency who they're working for also has to sign it, and the agency needs to keep track of those because they're liable for that information for 3+ years. Any employee working on assessments paid with 50% of federal funds, then they need, and so if you're getting paid half federal and half state, you would still need to do time and effort for 100% of your time. So it would be split between state and federal, but it would show the whole time that you work. And if you're a substitute, you would need to have time and effort because you're still being paid from federal funds.
And just again, we reiterate this, anyone paid with federal funds needs to do time and effort documentation, but you might have to do different things. Some will do the semi-annual, some will do the monthly. It's gonna vary based on what your split is, what other funds are used, what the object code is.
And how you're using your employees, how you're spreading them out. Then you have to decide where you're accountable.
But no one is exempt if you're paid from this federal grant, any other federal grant. You still need to do time and effort.
Correct. What is the point of time and effort reporting? An employee that's being paid with federal grant money must maintain and show that they're working on allowable projects and the money is being spent to pay them for their time spent on that federal program. So, and the records have to reflect an accurate accounting of the work performed. So it's critical that you do all these requirements from the feds.
Because at any point, as the state education agency, we can be audited around this, and they'll want to know what our policies and procedures are. And that's what we're going to ask of you. What are your policies and procedures around time and effort? Is it easily accessible? Maybe you've submitted for your reimbursements, you submitted time and effort, and Sandy and Tammy have reviewed it for 21st Century Title 4B, have reviewed it, looks good. But then that we could still ask if we come and do an on-site monitoring visit, well, show me all the records from this date. So even if you don't have to submit it in the Utah grant system, you still need to keep record of it, and it needs to be readily available for any kind of audit.
Yeah, because if we were audited and they wanted to see it, then we would be coming to you, getting it, or they could come and audit you and you would have to provide it. So just make sure you have everything available to you.
Yes, we want everyone to be prepared for any kind of audit, and this is taxpayer funding. We need to be good stewards of that. We need to know what the rules are, and we need to be following the rules.
Okay, so a semi-annual time and effort documentation. These are the minimum items that should show on your form, whether you're doing a manual form or an electronic form. You want the name of your organization, the name of your employee, the employee's job title, and the time period of the work performed. If you're doing the semi-annual, you'll have a 6-month range. If you're doing monthly or daily, you would have the dates on the time on the reporting. And a statement that says 100% of the time and effort was supported and approved, and the name of the program and the title, activities. And it must be signed by the employee and dated, and the supervisor must sign and date it.
So this can be done semi-annually, but you have to be 100% paid out of Title 4B funds.
To
do this kind of time and effort reporting.
To do this semi-annual twice a year, you must do the same thing every day, paid out of the same fund.
That's one option.
And then this document here is just kind of an example. And like I say, there's several examples. If you're doing electronic time cards, people create their own version of this. As long as they have those key components from the previous slide, then you should be in compliance with the federal regs. Okay, a personal activity report, or a PAR. That is where you have a chart and you say, this is what I do every day. From 9 to 10, I do this. From 10 to 11, I do that. But you're documenting how you're spending your time every day and what you're working on. And if you're spreading your time between different programs, it would be reflect upon this document. And here's an example of a monthly PAR. So you would have your schedule behind this, and then you could fill this out and submit the two pieces of paper together, and that would cover your PAR requirement for your time and effort. And then it still has to be signed by yourself, the employee, and the supervisor, and dated. And that the signatures are required on all of the documents. Okay, must include basically the same information as before: the name of the organization, the employee's name, the job title, and which period you're working. If you work that for a month or however long you work that, then that's what you need to report. And the counts used to pay the salary, if you're splitting between different things, you must put the account numbers on there. And the time must be listed for all accounting codes used for the salary. So even if you're paid from a state fund or a matching fund or whatever, it needs to include all of the funds you are being paid with. And you must indicate the total time for each of the accounting codes. And then you must sign a date, and your supervisor must sign a date. And if you work that fixed schedule every week, then the employee will be able to do a semi-annual. If you do it every week and you're doing the same thing, as long as you keep doing that, you can do it twice a year. Say if you did it 3 months and then they change your schedule, so do a 3-month, start a new one, and if you could go for another 6 months, or if they change it in another 2 months, then you would do another time and effort. Whenever your schedule changes, you would do a new time and effort, but at least twice a year. Okay, a monthly activity report is basically the same stuff. You have to put your name of your organization, your time period, your employee name, and your job title. And you're going to keep track of basically what you work every day and the hours that you put in. Date, titles, everything you need. Employee with a fixed schedule doing the same job each week. So use the previous form on the previous 2 slides and attach your fixed schedule for the certification period. And it can be no longer than 6 months. So you'd still have to do it every 6 months or when your schedules change. Written policies are essential. Anytime you receive federal funds, you must have a written policies on how you're going to manage the funds, how you're going to manage your time and effort, your travel, everything you do with federal funds, you must have a written policy. So time and effort is, to me, one of the first ones you would do. And procurement, yes, everything you do with federal funds must have a policy. And since starting here, we've been a little lax in our policies, but we're getting them all up to speed. So the completion of time and attendance reporting, you need to know how you're going to do it. Like if you pay every twice a week or whatever, you're going to have the supervisor look over, approve this time and effort, the work time, and get their time and effort and everything in a row. And they're going to have all the written documentation and the processes that it will take to complete the payroll process. And then you need like an internal review process so that you ensure that you're following your policies. It's not like somebody else, it's not the federal policy or what, it's your policy on how you're going to manage your time and effort, your time expended, all of the things to go with payroll.
And it's important. We really see this school year, as Tammy mentioned, maybe we hadn't been provided as much guidance or support around what written policies and procedures you need around the fiscal information, but we see this year as a technical assistance year. We want to provide guidance, support to you in getting these policies and procedures, because when we monitor, we're going to need all of these policies and procedures. We need to review them. That will be upcoming for next school year. When I come out this year, I might say, do you have one? Can I see it? But next year we will be really saying, send us your policies and procedures. So it would be in everyone's best interest to start doing that this year, getting them together. And if you don't know your written policies and procedures, now is the time to contact your fiscal staff, whether you're a school district or a community-based organization. Contact them and say, I need some training on this. I have this federal grant. I want to be in compliance. It's likely that you do have these policies and procedures somewhere. Maybe you're new to your position or there's been a lot of transition, but getting those policies and procedures, especially around time and effort, also around purchasing, that becomes a big issue too. If you're buying curriculum or other larger supplies and equipment, you need to make sure you understand what the purchasing requirements are. So that's something we want to support for this year, but moving forward, that will be added to our monitoring checklist and something we will really be reviewing in depth for next school year.
And you'll also need cash management policy, how you handle the cash when it comes in or what you're doing with it. So if you run out of things to write policy on, you can contact us. Okay, update policies and trainings with time and effort requirements. Staff annually. If you have a big turnover in your staff, you need to make sure that you train on how to do your time and effort documents and what's required of you. If you're new coming off the street, you would not know how to do this.
And giving them that, well, we don't just doing this because the state is making us do this, but the reason behind documenting the time spent on different activities, how important that is. So you're in compliance with your grant. And so you're also, again, being good stewards of federal funding and any funding. So they don't just know, well, it's just something we have to do, but giving them some background about, no, this is really important. And we gave the example of that university that had to pay back millions of dollars. We don't want that to happen in Utah with these programs. So please, please make this part of your annual training and ongoing training for new staff.
Okay, and there's our contact information. You can contact me, Tammy Long, or Sandra Grant, or Camille. Any of us would be glad to help you.
Yes, we're always happy to help. So this provided just a brief overview of some fiscal pieces that keep coming up, allowable and allowable expenses. Often we have many questions about that, and we have many questions about time and effort. But if you have more specific questions, please reach out. We're happy to provide you the support you need, and you can always contact us. So that's it for this fiscal training for the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant.